you go. You may get a pop-up on that. Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, my friend Mark Sanders may join us. I forwarded him the email. He joined us once before.
Okay.
We'll see.
All right. I'm going to get started here. If you could, if you especially have background noise, just mute your mic unless you have to ask a question and stuff. But I'll go ahead and get started here, and I'll tell you why I want to get started. I have tons of stuff to talk to you people about. There's a lot going on, as you probably know. Can you guys see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Whoop, that's not the date. There we go. There's probably about 10 or 12 different subjects we could go over tonight, but I just want to get kind of the hotter ones and the ones that I think we need to pay attention to. There was a number of things going on in the last couple of weeks that prompted us like, hey, let's get let's together again. I think it's probably going to start as we've been doing. We're going to be picking up our cadence as things go on, because I think everybody knows in census there's something wrong. In fact, I'm getting more calls for people saying, hey, can you talk to me about what's going on, or can you advise me on what to do here? Anything from home security to banking.
Yep.
I'm getting a lot of requests. And you know, it's just all of a sudden, like one day I had like 4 people call me. I'm thinking they probably watched the same news article or something, but it's just picking up. And I think anybody that's paying attention to what's going on knows that, okay, this is kind of extraordinary stuff. We've been paying attention to this for a long time, but now there's some things that are starting to converge, and that's what I want to talk to you guys about. So I'll get started. If I'm talking fast, I got a lot of slides and stuff going on. I'll give you time to talk and ask questions here in between, okay? All right. Before we go into anything, I want to talk to you guys about food issues. This has come up recently. Does anybody know what happened a couple days right through the Midwest? Was anybody paying attention to that? All right, I learned a new word. The word is derecho, right? That's an actual word from weather terminology that means a fast-moving line of intense storms. What I didn't know is it wiped out several million acres of grain. Serious issue. They're saying that it could be absolutely devastating. We're not hearing a lot of it yet, but they're saying it could be a devastating issue. It's definitely going to impact the market and grain commodity prices. There's no doubt that's coming. Same time, China is facing a food shortage because they're dealing with a drought, flooding, pests, and all sorts of everything, right? So, okay, on the other side of the world, we got a similar situation. We've got issues there. Okay, why is that kind of important to the United States? We don't get much of our food from the United States, from China, right? Anybody want to take a crack at that? What has China been doing with their bonds over the last 5-6 years? They've been buying up Western farmland. So if they're going to take the output of their farms, it's not going to come to the United States. It's coming out back to their place. So basically, there's not going to be a market if they're running into a serious food shortage. And don't forget, there's 4 times as many of them as there are us. We're like, what, 310 or 320 million? They're like 1.34 billion. There's a lot of mouths to feed. And if they're getting food shortage and having trouble, they're going to take all the grain and stuff that they're growing here and send it there. There's not going to be any coming into the market. So that's an issue. Then we have, this is an interesting situation too, that Beirut blast. Did anybody see that?
Yeah.
On the news? Holy mackerel.
That was crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw that clip of people driving down the highway. This just looks like a mushroom cloud in the distance. They stop, and then this one guy turns around immediately. It's kind of funny, sort of. But you know, they have all sorts of speculation what's going on, this thing out. But here's the interesting thing: it wiped out 85% of the grain silos over there, which is going to impact a big problem. In fact, there's already, if you look up there, you can start to see there's food riots and stuff. So they're getting concerned they're starting, and there's concern about how they're going to feed people because all this grain got wiped out. So I'm just bringing that up because in the context of the other thing we're going to see, I want you to keep this in the backdrop. Okay, we've got the potential of a lot of grain not hitting our market here very shortly. Okay, so time. Back in February 2020, when we started, we met. Right, this slide is from that, and we were. And if you take a look at that, was way ahead of COVID. We were saying, hey, the stock market stabilized. Okay, right now it looks okay. It get hit later, and Jim's got clobbered, all that stuff. They're looking at Trump money, massive stimulus go in, and you know, people in business are reconsidering their lives. And this is what we're looking at, the national debt. We said, hey, this is going to really put money into the into the national debt, and then the budget deficit, which they just announced here. I think it was just literally about an hour ago. I was eating dinner and saw that they announced it. It was like it's record 2.8 trillion budget deficit. Budget deficit, not the national debt. Budget deficit, which is just an extraordinary amount of money. I see Nathan's joined us. He'll tell you that's an extraordinary amount of money. And you know, we have this situation where and for those Hope Council people who've been here for quite a while, understands what, you know, we have an economic system that they've just been shoveling, you know, pavement in front of it, but at some point there's a whole bunch of things that could be an issue. And back in February, we could say, look, we could see a short-term drop in the price of precious metals. And once they figure out the damage of what's going on, it's going to be a different story. We said the dollar could get destroyed in this. What we said was massively inflationary. We could see debt repudiation, which means, and it's already starting, we have ports out in the West that refuse to take bonds as payment, or they're going to ports in the over in Europe and Asia, things like that. And they usually U.S. bonds are no problem. That's how they paid. These large U.S. bonds, they would just hand them over, and they're not taking them. And what we said back then is we're saying, hey, 20 to 24, we're probably seeing an end of the Fed. And we're also looking at potentially an asset-backed currency. I want to keep that in the back of your mind too. And then at the time, you know, what happened to precious metals, we were looking at like, wow, it's getting sucked up, okay? So we jumped to today. And anybody been paying attention? I'm sure all of you have. You know, those that have held on to precious metals got beat up over the last eight years terribly, as they basically went back to the old game, chased the money out of the metals and commodities, and then went crazy. But since March, gold has increased 25%, and as of 12/30 today, it was 1948. I'm checking the price right now. See what it did today. Yeah, it came back a little bit. The bottom line is it's at or around it was all-time high, and it's all-time high since like 2011. Silver is the big one, 141% increase since March, 12 to 29. It's backed off a little bit too, but make no mistake, it's on a run. It's going to be on a tear for sure, and we're expecting it to keep going. There's a number of articles that are saying like, hey, usually we've seen this type of thing when they mess around with the paper market. And that's not the real market. It's the derivatives and shorts and things like that and what we call the metals deposits, where they have actually 1 ounce of metal, but they're allowing it to be sold to multiple people for a piece of paper, basically. Well, they have a claim, 100 to 1 claim on 1 ounce of silver. I think it's now about 120, 130 claims per ounce. But basically, this was a good article saying that, look, hey, this time it's a little bit different. It's due to physical buying, not paper speculating. And that could be, paper speculating can be anything, like I said, buying a stock, saying, hey, I want a gold deposit. Well, they say, here's your piece of paper, you got a gold. But your neighbor gets the same piece of paper, and it's only one thing of gold, as we said. So it's, it's growing evidence that the rapid rise of silver is due to physical buying, not paper speculation. We can see this commercial net short position, which we talked about before, as okay, that's one of the factors here. And I have been talking to my source downtown, Eddie, and he got wiped out quick in this last go round. It was like, back in March when he got wiped out, that was pretty quick. But this one here was just as quick. He's like, boom, they just cleaned me out. I'm now waiting for West Coast dealers to see if I can get something here. So he's got, another hit. And it's not good for the market when we have fast rising currency, because it becomes hard to get a hold of it, quite frankly. We really like to see it like an orderly market, but whenever we have those spikes like that and volatility, it went up 100 points and then, went up to this point and then came down 100 points. Anytime we see that type of volatility, we know the market's in play. So it's one of these we have to pay attention to. Confirm local shortages. It's not even coming off the street. There's a regular diet or a stream of stuff that's like, bringing old U.S. coins and stuff, and it's just not coming. So it might change. Just let you know, at the moment, it's kind of stopped. Another data point is the U.S. Mint has stopped production of silver American Eagles for the year. So they're not making any more. That's going to, definitely affect prices, because basically that sets it for the year, and then you'll have numismatic value on top of that. And that's the thing to remember. Silver has an inherent value. It's metal price. It's an industrial metal, and we need it everywhere. It can have numismatic value, as we know, and it's a heavily traded and hedging economy. Those are the 4 areas where this thing can take off, and we're only seeing one of them.
Where did your...
Hello? Oh, okay. Moving on. Probably noticing that the dollar, a lot of this movement is partially because we just said it's like, okay, they're buying physical metals, but also, hey guys, put your...
That's Carol Haskins.
Uh-oh, am I in trouble? Hey, Jacob, set me on mute.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry.
No problem. The dollar is, if you've been paying attention, the dollar's starting to slide, and now it's, it's gone into areas it's gone before, but now we're starting to get attention from economists and currency people and financial people all over the place, like this Stephen Roach. He's a well-known Yale financial analyst, economist, and he's basically saying, like, look, this is not looking good, and it's looking worse, because we're just getting hit on the value of the dollar. We all know that the hit on the value of the dollar is inflationary. Whenever that value goes down, things cost more, and then we end up in an inflationary economy. So we have to seriously pay attention to that, because remember when we talked about this is kind of one of the triggers. Now, here's why things are looking at this, okay? You can go out to, and this is fun to do, if you're kind of into weird fun, but you can go out to FRED, which is it's the Federal Reporting of Economic Data, and you can get all sorts of information out there, and it's free to the public. They're mandated to produce it, and you can find out, well, what's the supply costs, and what's the what are interest rates? How much money does the Fed have? What's on balance sheets, things like that. One of the things they track is the M series, which is basically it's data on monetary value, how much money we have in the system. They used to have a value called M6, which was it was basically your broadest understanding of money in the system. They just quit reporting it. That was years ago. M3 is like the next closest, like this is basically saying how much currency we have in the system. And if you look like way back in 2008 and 9, we were very concerned about the fact that they were putting, that national currency, it's keep putting it in. And this was inflationary. Okay, basically this is the idea of them printing money. If you don't understand what that means, call me, we'll set up a time, we'll talk through why printing money is bad. It ruins the value of the dollar. But we were very concerned back in 2011. They just keep printing and printing. You can see it's almost gone linearly up till now, right? And then in March, this is what they did. They printed up all close to $3 trillion and put it inside the system. Now, we have a linear graph, right? You got to go from what, 2014, that's at 11 trillion. We got to go to 2018 to get $3 trillion in the system. So they basically printed up 4 years of currency and jammed it into the system in about 3 to 4 months, right? That's extremely, extremely inflationary. Could be hyperinflationary because that's a massive injection. And what we talked about in the Hope Council before, you have this thing of velocity of money, but when they start putting the money in the system, it's anywhere from 9 to 15 months is when you really start seeing the inflationary effects. I'm sorry, 6 to 12 months before you start seeing the inflationary effects, right? So here we are about 6 months out, and sure enough, we see the value of the dollar starting to trail down. And that's another thing you need to pay attention to, okay? This is, by the way, this is unprecedented. We've never seen that much money put into the system, ever, ever. In fact, it's so much that I think you have to go from the time we started our currency all the way to around 1969, 70 to get $1 trillion of currency in the system, and now we have 3 in a few weeks. You know, like I said, about 12 weeks, it's all in, and it's still going. And there's talk of it more. Now, I actually think, speculation on my part, I actually think this is the current administration's plan to get rid of the Fed is they're going to drown it in its own stuff. That's another discussion. I just want you guys to pay attention to this because I really think this is where it's headed ultimately. And you get hints if you listen to Trump talking. He says, "Oh, hey, we're going to have, we're going to have 0 interest on our loans, student loans, and to the end of the year. That's already there." And he's talking about making it permanent. Well, how can you do that? Well, there'd have to be something extraordinary happen to be able to make that happen, right? Same thing with he's now talking about we're going to get rid of the payroll tax, right? How the heck can you do that? You think, oh, that's crazy. Most of the things he said he's going to deliver it on. So the question is, are you crazy or is there something else we don't know about? I think those things are clues. And we absolutely know for a fact he understands how this stuff works, which, by the way, you're probably less than 1/10 or 1/50th of the entire population that understands how this stuff works. We know he works. He knows how it works because he accepted gold bars for a building he sold. Was happy to have it. So moving forward, we need to pay attention to that, right? Dollar value, dollar index. This is what we've done since January. And like I said, what's really been troublesome is this June to August slide. That's 5%, right? Now, one would think of ultimately that's going to turn into about 5% inflation. Because if you have a pool of money chasing a stable amount of goods, you would imagine like, okay, things just got 5% more expensive. Yet, what is the government reporting as inflation? Does anybody know? Any of my financial guys know? 1%. They're claiming 1% inflation. Now, you're probably finding that a little bit different because you've probably seen some things going up. I know I am. This is most likely going to be a trend here. So really need to pay attention to the dollar index. That's the Dixie. You just type in DXY in Google. It'll pop this up, and you can take a look at see what the dollar index. There are a number of places where this stuff starts breaking down, right? When it gets to the 80s, there's places where there's what they call support, in which it'll bounce around a little bit, but if it goes into the 80s, that's kind of like condition yellow. When it goes below 72, that's condition red because that was like the nearest low back in I think around 06 or something like that. It was it was very, very worrisome during that time, and nobody knew about it. But this time, everybody knows about it. So we see the dollar sliding like that. You're definitely going to be it's going to be code red and time to do some things because we will for sure be sliding into a heavily inflationary environment. Okay. Okay. Now, Why is that important? If you guys remember back in March 2011, I think it's probably a handful of people here that were there. We did a little bit of a study or presentation on what happens after the dollar dies, right? What can we expect, or how do we see it coming, right? And we said that some of the triggers for that could be the bond market vigilantes. They would call our bonds. If you ever remember the movie Rollover from 1980, Chris Christopherson, Barbara Streisand, I think it was, somebody like that. That whole premise of the movie was that Saudi Arabia called us on the bond market, cashed in, it basically set it the bonds, and it set a hyperinflation off in the country. Interesting movie. If you can find it, go watch it. Global spending of dollar reserves. In other words, we end up sort of a world financial crisis, and these countries have to spend their dollar reserves. That would be a trigger that would slide in the entire economic system. Global dumping of dollar. In other words, we desire to do it because we want to hurt the United States, or we just want to get rid of them. You know, we don't care. That would be a trigger that would make this thing slide, run us into hyperinflation or some bad economic situations. Government unable to meet obligations. We said that one's probably the least likely because they'll just print more money. And that's what they've been doing for the last 10 years. Interesting we mentioned a natural or man-made disaster or catastrophe, because that's kind of what we're dealing with right now, is this whole COVID-19 thing. It falls into that category, and it's definitely it caused us a tremendous amount of economic stress. But it's one of these things that's a trigger, and we're not done with it yet, and that's what I want to talk to you guys about. Loss of confidence in the United States, further banking crisis. We went through a lot of that. Those were all triggers. COMEX default, which is the commodities market. If we lost the DIF fund out of the banking system and went bankrupt, the banks went bankrupt, then that could be a trigger. And there's a few other things too. War could be a trigger. We were saying, hey, these are the things to look for. And we also said, hey, when this happens, here's some things that we're going to see. Currency hard to come by. That's going to be one. I highlighted that one because I kind of ran into it recently. Anybody know of hearing about the coin shortage that's going on right now? You guys aware? I see a bunch of shaking heads there.
Yes.
Okay. Now, interesting. You wouldn't think you would have a coin shortage when people aren't moving around, because they're going to tend to pay electronically or by check or by credit card. Okay, they're going to pay like that. So you would imagine there would be a fairly stable amount of current or physical currency out there, and it shouldn't be an issue. So looking at the reasons, right? Here's a local article on it, which like, oh, hey, there we are. And this was back in July, still going on. Went to my auto parts store last week, and a big sign there, hey, exact change appreciated because we have no coins. And here's where the Fed chairman, Jerome Powell, is talking. He says, what has happened is that with the closure of the partial closure of the economy, the flow of coins through the economy has gotten it's kind of stopped, which I thought, okay. If it's a flow of coins and it stops, okay, it just slows down. It doesn't dry up, right? So that wasn't a great answer. Then he says that and a decline in coin production in an effort to keep employees safe has left businesses across the region facing more complications. They work to reopen, adhering social distances, yada, yada, yada. Now, let me ask you guys a question, right? Are we really to believe, and this is how, by the way, this is how the media gets us all the time. We don't even hear it until all of a sudden a hammer goes off in our head, like, boom, what did he just say? Did we actually, we're going to dry up the national coin system because we're afraid of a couple federal employees who could be deemed essential personnel and who could have the finest personal protection equipment, PPE, money can buy, to keep an essential need going, which would be currency, right? Because of that, we've declined production in an effort to keep employees safe. And that's the big reason, right? Does that make sense to you guys? I don't think so. Okay. That sounds like a really lame excuse, especially because there's a lot of business that was far less essential than our financial system that had that kept going. It's deemed essential. The government can deem whatever they want. They can deem this essential, that essential, and you keep on going. So this just doesn't make sense. It's because of COVID, we shut the mint down, right? Especially when we didn't shut Wall Street down, right? Wall Street kept going. We still had people on the floor. Everything started, kept going. Yeah, there were some changes, but we kept that going. Banking didn't shut down, right? But we decided we're going to cut the coin production. All right, very weird. Another data point to put up there. This is just fact. Now, under rumor speculation, I have gotten information through fairly reliable sources basically saying this is the Fed. This is the first step in starting to dry up the Fed and getting us onto a different currency. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. It's just odd. We expected that to happen. And here we are with another data point that, hey, that might be going on. So bottom line, it's just very weird. At best, it's weird.
BJ, do you think this is a mechanism to try to get us get us off cash? Fiat currency and onto digital? I mean, that was my thought, but maybe I'm being paranoid.
No, it very well could be. It could be that they're going to announce some sort of cryptocurrency. They need to get us out of this for it to work. Because again, and if you're hoarding all these dollars that's under a mattress and stuff like that, they want that stuff out because they'll basically kill the dollar in the case. If they go to another currency and say, this one we're going to asset back. In other words, it's a cryptocurrency, but it's asset backed, that might be an issue. Or they might say, hey, we're going to redo the dollar, but this stuff don't count. It's got to be the new dollar or whatever. It's a new currency. By the way, if you asset back coins, then you're going to have to change the value of them. So that's going to be an issue. So yeah, it could be that, Colleen, for sure. So just something to keep in mind.
Also, this stuff, the coins have actual cost associated with them, where dollars just have paper and ink associated. And, even though the silver content has declined, copper's been going up and all, nickel has been going up. So the cost of making these have gone up.
Exactly. And they'll just quit making them. Now, and especially if they think it's going up, they're not going to buy supplies, right? So why would you do that? I mean, they could go ahead and buy it ahead of time, but if they don't plan on going there, then why do it? While I'm talking, can somebody go out to coinflation.com and look up the value of a nickel, the physical value of a nickel, okay? And that's going to be a good example there. Because,
can I ask a question, BJ?
Sure.
What I'm wondering is when they're saying, okay, the coins aren't flowing, we're not making any more, how often do coins go out of circulation? Paper money maybe is more fragile, but what's with coins? Where are they going?
That's exactly the thing. You either stick them in a jar, but then they, you take them to the bank, you get rid of them. That's just it. Why should we have a coin shortage at a time we have decreased economic activity? Makes no sense. Now, they do periodically take them and melt them and reuse them when they're in bad shape. They pull them off, send them to there, they remelt them, they restrike them, and out they come. But this is the thing, it just doesn't make any sense. And again, our penny isn't copper anymore, it's largely aluminum. All this stuff's zinc. There's no silver in this anymore. So this is just bare industrial metals. It doesn't make sense unless, of course, like we said, we're expecting the price to go up or they're planning to do something. And we said this would kind of be one of the, if you will, the little bells that like, hey, this is some of the things that's going to happen. You're going to see your currency start to shrink when they're going to change an economic system. Okay, that answer your question?
Hey, BJ.
Yes.
Have you done any research or looked into the claims that the Trump administration folded the Fed into the Treasury?
That was a few months ago. And basically, it was done kind of by executive order under the national emergencies.
So that is for real then. I just haven't had a chance to research it.
Yeah, that's what I had seen and heard, basically under the national emergency that we're at, and the fact that we're still under war, believe it or not. That's going to come into play later. We still have a declaration of war. It's never been rescinded. So we're still under wartime, if you will, status. That's a different status for the United States. In fact, I got to remember, I have to go back and look at it. Our flags that are displayed behind the president, and I even think like the direction of the Eagles or something like that is different under wartime. And I've noticed they've been doing it. Like there's gold fringe on it and stuff like that. That gold fringe flag has been back. Basically, that was an indication that we're on a war footing. I got to go look at that. But anyway, back to your thing. Yeah, that's what I'd heard. He basically became the chairman of the Fed by this basis, and we have national emergency. We're taking this in. They're going to fold this in. So now they have basically a monolithic command and control of the economy. And I really think something's up with that. So
does that exist anywhere in writing in an executive order or anything for the public to be able to read, or is that just? No,
it is. And when it happened, here's the thing. I didn't commit it to memory, but it was. You can go back and search it, and it'll tell you how it happened.
Because correct me if I'm wrong, but that's like unprecedented.
This is all unprecedented, and people don't realize that. This is all unprecedented. We've never had $2.8 trillion budget deficit. Budget deficit, not budget deficit, right? We've never had this much money supply going into the system. We've never had all this stuff going on, and then a coin shortage and this. So it's like I said, I told you there's a lot of things starting to converge. We just need to pay attention to it.
Well, the one interview I listened to, and I'll shut up about this and we can move on, but I really wanted to get your opinion on that, because the one individual, I forget his name, he was Australian, and he had run for office down there. And anyway, it was an interesting interview, but he said that Trump basically by doing that was spending, the Rothschild money. I mean, the banking elite's money. And so it's a different game, and Americans don't realize that, what's being run up right now, he's using the bankers' money against them.
That's exactly what's happening. And what I had heard and read, and this was a couple of years ago before he actually did it, was people that were saying he's going to use their own rules against them. He's also been on record of saying that the national debt does not belong to us. Right? In other words, that debt
is true.
Is not ours, right? And that's why he's going around saying, like, hey, you can't believe we're going to have a financial situation where, hey, zero interest loans and things like that for the students and stuff. That's how I think there's something coming. I'm convinced there's something coming, and it's all related. Because again, you hear this, but if you know this background information, then it's that you start putting pieces together.
Well, yeah, whoever the white hats were, whoever helped behind the scenes in Trump getting elected, they had to have known that this was going to come to a head.
Well, this is the military for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I can't prove anything, but that's the only thing that makes sense.
Yeah, there are people on record that basically said that the military drafted him, and I can show you videos and stuff where people come out and said that. But they basically saw our country being wiped out, and they needed somebody to take it back. So this, I think, this is military precision planning. You're watching here. I know for a fact he understands how this works, because back when he campaigned, there were 3 times in which he had made statements that said, oh, he really knows what this is. One of them was the illegal immigration, talking about currency, right? It's like, okay, he knows how that works. The second one was understand how he hates the Fed, right? And the third one was how our national debt really doesn't belong to us. I'm like, holy cow, he's technically right, because basically these guys are causing us to borrow our own money, right?
Yeah.
And causing bond rollers and all that stuff that we went through that caused us all the Maalox consumption back in 2011 and 12. Okay, we understand it now, and now you're starting to see he understands it. So just keep an eye on it, because it could be coming. Okay, moving on. All right, so what's the implications? If we have 1% inflation is what they're saying we have. Right now, I just did a search on show me the best banks, right? In other words, best interest rates of bank. It's really weird that it's 1.05%, 1.05%, but somehow Goldman Sachs sits on top of it at 0.8. I don't know how that works. I hate that bank. I hate that bank with everything it stands. Two reasons. One, what they did in 2008 and 9 was criminal, and they got away with it. And the second thing is they're one of the holders of the Fed. There's 2 American banks that comprise the Fed, and Goldman Sachs is one of them. So don't ask me how they got
the other.
JP Morgan's the other. Yeah. Now how they got the 0.8%, and that's the best rate sitting on a search, but I digress. It's the little things that set me off anymore. But okay, 1.05% interest, and we have 1% interest. Roughly, let's just say 1% interest, right? Dollar's not doing anything in the bank, but if inflation is going up, right, and you have it sitting in the bank at 1%, and it's losing 3, 4, 5%, then technically you've got like a negative interest rate going, right? Now we have said that that's one of these triggers. Whenever you have like negative interest rates in that respect, in other words, your dollar is losing its value like that, that's something that's going to start bringing up the velocity of money. And what the velocity of money is when you start saying, hey, I buy this now, right? It's going to be cheaper in 2 months because I know the price is going to go up. We start seeing that, the velocity of money starts going. People get paid, they get it out because it's cheaper, you get more value that way. That was one of these hyperinflationary triggers that they all look for. What's the velocity of money, the volatility, how much currency has been injected in the system. And all this is to say that, you know, we have if you will, I want to say all of the preconditions of a hyperinflation. All that you need to really get it going is to get our economy start rolling again, and all of a sudden things go crazy. Once we start having like, oh, we have industrial demand and we need this, and we have all this money in the system and more money buying for it, that starts the process. So whenever
My shingle prices are going up 6% on Monday, BJ. 6% shingles.
you don't say.
$100 a square are going to be $106 on Monday.
Yeah.
That's
So
nickel.
what's that? What's the nickel? You always say it?
What's up 6%?
Shingles.
Shingles.
Asphalt shingles for roofing.
$100 a square. Wow. Okay. Did anybody look up the price of a nickel yet?
It was 82 cents for the melt, was the melt price on the nickel.
82. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Says total melt value, 82 cents.
Per nickel.
82.
That's what it says.
That's 82% of the metal in the denomination. It
Yeah.
has
What's
the
the value?
value at
This total melt value, 82 cents.
I'm blown away. That's true.
I mean, I don't know what's normal. I mean, I've never actually looked at this, so
And it's been everywhere from like low of 3 cents to like 7 or 8 cents a
Okay.
nickel. Like a nickel in melt value is worth 8 cents. So if it says the melt value is 82.
So maybe they needed to just pull all the nickels off and to keep everybody guessing. They just start pulling it all out.
Very well could be. Hang on to your nickels.
Wow.
Yeah. And by the way, I got a bunch of those because I would get back in 2009 and 10, nickels were 7 cents and pennies were like, for the copper value, pennies were like 4 or 5 cents, right? For melt value, I just stuffed them away. And I still have them. And all of a sudden they started, it was funny back then they were beating up preppers and saying like, oh, this is what you look for if you got a prepper, that he collects nickels, you know? And it's like, oh, hey, I'm on the radar now. But if that's right, holy cow.
you
That's
know what?
amazing.
Here, I put in what, you know what? It's $1, and because it asked me, I thought it said number of coins. I'm going back to how I figured this. $1, so that's 20 nickels, I guess. So it's $1, total face value of $1. Now that I
Okay.
put in 1, and I think it calculated dollars. So, but that's
Okay.
still
Divide that by
82
20.
cents divided by 20. Yeah,
It's about 4 cents.
4 cents.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So, okay, it costs 4 cents a nickel to get a value of a nickel. Okay. We've seen that go over. And again, when you're talking about fabrication costs, that's the metal cost. That's not the fabrication, which could cost more. So right now, it's probably costing more to make a nickel than the nickel's worth.
Yeah, that's the total value and just the metal inside. Yeah.
Yes.
It says
Okay.
copper and nickel. Yeah.
Yeah, about 4 cents. Okay.
Yeah.
Fabrication costs are not light. So again,
No, yeah.
we're getting there. Okay. That would explain it too. All right. So let's go. So general recommendations, and this is a big if, okay? again, we're starting to see all these little things that are like, oh, that's a sign, that's a sign, that's a sign. Okay. We start seeing inflation take off, then investing in stuff is going to be more important again. Now, we've been doing it. It's gotten beat up because of the whole, the shift back to Wall Street and back to financials and chasing mortgages and stuff like that. They reinflated the mortgage bubbles and stuff like that. That's all back the way it was, with some regulation around. But the bottom line is investing in stuff is going to be important to retaining wealth again, and we got to be ready for the shift. So if you have it, you should probably hold it, and we'll talk about that here in a second. I said that it's down there. If you have it, hold it. A lot of us been holding it painfully, but here's the thing: we have it, and that was always the thing: is better to have it a little bit early than a day late. Not have it a day late. And, we're seeing all the value coming back for this that have held out. So it'll be there. It for sure will be there, I think.
So you're saying investing in stuff, that's different than buying stuff, right? Because I'm in the market for a new car and I don't know if I should just fix the old one. Yeah.
These are decisions you're going to have to make. If you're saying, look, I for sure am buying a new car, absolutely buying a new car, it's probably going to be more later than it will be now in an inflationary economy. Now we have to see if, again, we're at the cusp of this, because if you look at the reporting data, they're saying 0.8. Oh, it's 1 point this month. And again, it's because they play with the numbers. According to the hedonics of it, you could be sitting in your dining room in a warm house over a chandelier with a porterhouse steak in front of you, right?
Okay.
And the next month, you could be sitting with a candle for both light and heat and eating dog food. And basically, they're saying, well, that's equivalent, right? And that's how that whole system works. Without going into details, they have equivalencies. Of course, the standard of living and everything has gone down, but they're basically saying, oh, no, that doesn't count toward inflation when it used to. So they can basically make substitutions and say, oh, yeah, you were eating steak, but now you're eating dog food. That's still meat, so therefore that doesn't count. That's flat. They've been playing that game for years. And what happens is you have to watch, because basically the government will point, oh, it's 2 or 3% inflation. And it's actually far worse. Best place I've found to get good information is John Williams' Shadow Stats. If you go out there, he'll give you what we really think inflation is. But if we're going into an inflationary economy again, or a hyperinflation, God forbid, then shifting to stuff will be very important. Okay, so just keep that in mind. We still got to watch, but you understand when the shift is on, you're going to have to be ahead of it.
Yeah, and that's what I wasn't sure with inflation looming. Should I do it now before my money's not worth anything?
Well, that's the next thing. If inflation is looming and you have dollars sitting around, the value of those are just going to decline. That's a fact. And we've seen it. Those that lived through the 70s saw it. Those that saw it in its nascent form when things started bubbling up in 08 and 09 saw it. That was an interesting time to be watching all that. But if this is like what we've done now, again, is our convergence of all these things that could really bust up the system and cause this to go, and that could be it. Now, again, all bets are off if they go turn this over to a new financial system. But I think they're running up the tab prior to shifting, because it makes no sense for us to not worry about the debt at all. We're not worried about the debt at all. I imagine Donald Trump runs his business differently. He would declare bankruptcy before he ran up the debt on some of this stuff. But we're just running up the debt, and we're going to do more stimulus and more, 0% for the student loans, and maybe indefinitely. And how we're going to drop payroll tax, there's something up. And he leaves little clues, so just keep listening for it.
That kind of reflects him using their own rules against them.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Absolutely.
I got a question.
Go ahead.
What about stock? Do you consider that an asset or like stuff that's good to hold or not?
It can be. It can be, absolutely. And we've taught folks here at the Hope Council that that's, there are some intricacies with the stock market and how the stocks are held. I think that's back 10 years ago was a lot sketchier. Now I think it's a lot more solid. Some of these banks have now kind of separated some of this, so there's a little less risk of like E-Trade going down because they like recapitalized, they got smart about what they're doing. But basically, yes, you can take, and it's a strategy I use too. I have some things in precious metals, I have some things in in other physical things, and then for a lot of my investments, there's a component where I'm looking for stuff. Stuff could be timber, water. It could be precious metals there too. You got to watch what you're doing there because there's some place you get hurt. It could be any exportable good that's in demand is a good thing. It could be conservative dividend paying foreign stocks that produce things that the United States needs. That's a good thing. It could be, bellwether stocks like Procter & Gamble, ExxonMobil. They got oil reserves, proven oil reserves, and okay, there's going to be worth something. Plus, they pay a dividend. Mining companies, they own the ore. That's stuff. So you're going to want to shift to like, okay, what are companies that have stuff that's probably going to be in demand? That would be a good place to look. So that's how you should be kind of tuning yourself to look at that. Okay.
So not Facebook.
No. Yeah. No more Bear Stearns either. Anyway, back to this. Gold's at an all-time high from 9 years ago, meaning that we just now got par with 2011 when they chased this thing out. We've jump punched the dollar in its man business since then. So it's going to go up. And by the way, it's not that there are now industry experts, and not just the gold bugs, but the industry expert is saying, yeah, they're seeing 3,000 gold by the end of this year. Very, very possible. Silver could have the rocket shot. We've always expected it because it's $22 below its high right now of 9 years ago at the same time frame. So it is really undervalued. The shorting and the naked shorting and all that stuff, the paper market has hurt it, but now people are demanding the real stuff. And my guess is,
BJ,
yeah.
When you say silver could hit or gold to hit 3,000, how do you know when to sell? I mean, I have no intention of selling, but is there a point that we should consider that?
Usually, here it is. There are 3 times that you should consider selling. One, you need the money. That one's easy. Okay, you got to sell it. You got to sell. The other one is like, okay, I've put into a long-term investment, and a lot of us have. We've sat on it. We've been crushed over the years. We watch the value, but it comes up, right? There comes a point where you've made a decision, and this is a hard thing. In fact, my friend Tim Daigle and I were talking about this not too long ago, where you have to have the discipline to say, if it goes up 25%, I have decided that's how much I will risk, and that's it, I'm pulling out. Okay? The third one is to basically say, look at the data and say, if this is all based on reality, right, then the value of that metal is going to keep going. Then there's a point in the future where I want to do it. But it's that one there we have the least amount of data on to do it. What we have to go is on, okay, is the fundamentals. Is what we're doing good for gold or bad? Putting money into the system, that makes gold go up. Having less or silver, having less silver as industrial metal, that makes the stuff go up. So you can just continue to do it. You see it to the point where like, okay, I've had it. That's it. And if you look at the overall trend, even though the last dip of the last 7 or 8 years, it just kind of got troughs, I think it's going to go right back up and continue rising. Just because all the other things we were looking at is doing the same thing. Look, I'll go back real quick here, right? There we are. That's a constantly rising graph. That's the money supply. This is a decreasing graph, right? We see a lot of that associated with the values and the metrics that go into gold calculations going like that. When that happens, I think it goes down, but it doesn't stay down. And in this case, with volatility, it should go up. Don't know if that helped you, but basically you're going to have to make a decision of either when it gets to here, I'm out, or I'm going to let that risk and ride, and then I'm going to watch the metrics behind it to see what they did. If all of a sudden the dollar got strong, I'd pull out of gold. temporarily.
If, let's say, they talk about replacing the dollar and gold's high, would that be a good time to dump the gold and get it new currency?
It's interesting you should say that. Let's talk through that a second. Because the last time they did that, they confiscated gold. Back when FDR did it. He came into office and said, hey, we need the gold, and then he revalued the gold. Now, quite frankly, there's not enough above ground holdings of gold to make a dent. I think in private hands, it's like it was 2 billion. Now it might be because the price range a bit more. That's not enough to, or maybe it's 200 billion, I think it was, of above ground gold. That's what it was in private hands. They confiscated. That's not going to make a dent. What will make a dent is you back it with gold and revalue the price of gold. They said, yeah, a US dollar is now worth $10,000 an ounce of gold, right? And they make that thing, then that's when you're going to have parity. And when you have parity with some sort of real thing, that happens to be an asset-backed currency, then you have an exit strategy right there. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Okay. We'll talk more about it. Because sometimes you never know. I mean, all of us were holding on to gold or watching it go. We never dreamed that they would continue to play this charade and repuff up the economy and get the stock market. They've destroyed the bond market. Who here remembers 7, 8, 9% interest on deposits and bonds and stuff like that? We were just talking with my family where we live. Our first house we got in Swissvale back in '94, and I got a really good deal at the time. It was an FHA loan for like 7.8% or something like that, which is, we haven't seen that in years. At the same time, you could actually get 4 or 5% right out of the bank. Putting your money in there, you'd actually make money. And back, if you got to remember back to the 70s, it was really big, right? You could get a lot for depositing your money. Now that's all gone. And that's what I'm saying is we never dreamed that they would wipe out the bond market, shove everybody into stocks and people don't understand stocks are not the economy. They shoved everybody into equities, and Nathan is a financial guy. He'll tell you that's what's been going on for the last 8, 9 years. They have wiped out a lot of the bond market in that place in there, and everybody's into equities, and that makes your 401ks look great. But the problem is it actually damages the whole economic system. Bonds serve a purpose, and not having it causes you to take different risks in different places that are not good. Bonds used to be as good as gold. That's what they would actually say. Bond is bond. Dollar's a dollar. Right? Now they've changed it. Right? In the banking system, it used to be you were senior. You put money in there, we got to give that money back. That's money. Right? Now, and I think Bill Haskins will tell you, we're not senior anymore. Their creditors are senior, and we get what's left. So if a bank dries up, we're left holding the bag, no pun intended. It's probably an empty. So the rules have changed, and we need to pay attention to it. Okay, I'll move on. But anyway, that's one of the things we could expect. Let me check the time here.
BJ,
Yes, sir.
just quick question on the metals. Okay, you have, if you put it in miners, that's an equity. If you go out and buy physical silver or gold, I mean, at this point in time, it's just a hedge against inflation because they're really not liquid. If you want to, you have to go to an eddy to convert them into dollars if you really want spending power because they're not a medium of exchange now.
But they are, and that's what people don't realize. You go to Eddie because, and I go to Eddie because he's the most reputable dealer in Pittsburgh, right? There are several others. Here in Cranberry, there are 6 different places I can walk in and liquidate my assets like that. So that's why. You'll look at that like it's a specialized place. But in this market right now, you could go to any dealer and they would be happy to pay you, probably a touch more, because they have no product. It's going out the door as fast as it comes in. So it is still very liquid. Not only that, you can get online and they'll buy it from you. There's a couple online places. I think AppMex will do it too. They'll take in, they'll get asset and in it goes, and then they'll pay you cash. So it is fairly liquid. With the stock, it's convenient, but here's the problem. It's electronic, which is we always have to worry about that. I think we're in pretty good shape as far as like ownership, but then there's been issues, with that too, of who really owns the stock when they pull the transactions. Now you probably noticed that you can buy fractional shares of stock. I forget what it's not Acorn or something else, Robinhood or something, that you can buy like teeny tiny fractions of stock. That's because they basically have a sub-market of the stock brokerage house that says, oh, we're going to buy a number of stocks and then we'll parcel it out and then we'll make the transactions, okay? So they've got the ownership of the stock. Now, if they decide, you know what, we're going to play that stock, we're going to go hedge it because we think it's going to go this way, and then they lose it, they play games with it, it might not be there, you might lose it. So while the stocks are more liquid and you can move it around quickly, there's no question, right? You're still dealing with the banking system, and that's a little bit of a question mark. So does that answer, Bill? And most of the time, and seriously, if you want to liquidate something, bring it here. I've got people line it up and say, hey, let me know if you can find silver or something. So, if you have a problem liquidating, come see me.
Hey, for what it's worth, while we're on this topic, just was checking out the chart, support and resistance levels. 92.50. We've double bottomed on the weekly chart on the U.S. dollar, so we're putting in some very firm support. If we close the week where we currently are, well, it'll be a lower close than we've had in a while. But the next two big areas of support is $91, and then $89 is a very strong support level.
Right.
You break through 89, then there's going to be a good bit further to fall.
Exactly.
So, for whatever that's worth, folks.
That's thank you for explaining that. You guys heard me earlier. I said, hey, if we get into the 80s, it's gonna be condition yellow. That's why it's gonna slide for a while. And then I think 72 is like the lowest one, and then it really goes down from there.
Yeah. So I mean, that's going to directly correlate with gold, silver rising further, and also the broader markets going higher, because I'm watching that chart daily right now. So.
Yep. All right. Appreciate it, Nathan. Thanks.
Yeah.
And if you see something, drop an email to us. We need to.
Oh, you know I will.
Attention. Yeah, I know you will. Thanks, bud. Okay. All right. Back into February 2020, we talked about, let's see if this, yeah, okay, here we go. Before we do that, we're off precious metals. Any questions on that right now? Good? Okay, very good. All right. Back in 2020, February, we started talking and we started looking at coronavirus. Say we need to start preparing for this. And this was toward, I think, about the third week of February is when we did this. And this is when it was just starting to pick up. We're saying, hey, it damages the economy. It's real. Sustained shutdown. They were talking about it at that point. We were saying, look, if we see that, bad things are going to happen. Farms shut down, supply chain gets hammered, credit market, potential shortages, and we'd already started seeing them, largely toilet paper and hand sanitizer. But we'd seen other things too dry up. We were basically saying, hey, right here, there's still potential for things to relapse, revert, or worse, and we get hit again. And basically, that's kind of what's happening here. We got hit again. There's arguments on whether or not this was manufactured, why it is we're seeing it again. There's a whole bunch. I mean, believe me, there's so much data out there and misinformation. It's hard to find out what's going on, but we're already seeing it, right? There's some curious things too. This is from the Hopkins coronavirus page, which you probably have seen before. And this is like, here we go. Back in February, like I said, this is like end of February. We were like right about here, if you could see my cursor. This is when we had that. We said, hey, I think things are going to go. And all of a sudden, it's funny, we were ahead of this. And boom, it went, right? By the end of March, we had seen this many daily cases, right? And we're seeing now, hey, right now we're supposedly having more daily cases than we were back in March. So in other words, we're getting 250,000 cases a day, according to this graph. Now, At 50,000, I wasn't seeing many people. And in fact, I didn't know any people that were getting it. At this rate, we should really be seeing people that were sick again or something like that. I don't see it. Do you guys do it? I am not seeing. This is what their fear was, because if you take this graph and you move it over here, that would be like, holy cow, we're overwhelming the medical system. I don't think we're overwhelming the medical system. I don't know of that many cases, and I don't know of anybody at the moment who I know is sick. I just played baseball. I coached baseball with my son, and this is like young adults. We're talking 18, 19. And these guys were all over the place, and they're in none of them, nobody, not a spectator, not an umpire, not a coach, not a player, got sick. Okay, so we're wondering, like, okay, what's going on here? I'm concerned about it. Why are we not seeing it? Right. The next graph is the this is actually deaths, and forgive me, I meant to say daily case, but I forgot to change that. That's deaths, right? So if you take a look at deaths here, end of March, we're like, oh, hey, 8,000 to 9,000 deaths a day, right? But here, way out here where we're at right now, we're at like below 7,000 deaths a day. Let me go back to this graph. At a time where we're 2.5 to 3 times more daily cases per day, we have less deaths when this thing was really raging, okay? So I'm concerned about that. That doesn't make any sense. And this is their data, right? So to put this another way, we have the same death rate that we did at the end of March, but with 3 times the reported cases. So something's not right here. So it's the thoughts on this, right? Are we getting better at treating it? Could be. There's certainly some treatments out there that people are claiming are working, and I know some people who have got sick, took it, and said that was a miracle. And they're in the health profession, so it was a miracle drug. They said there's no question. You know, they were sick as a dog, and then they took it, and day 2 they were back online. Is this mutating, getting weaker, so it's less of a threat? Are we testing more and then we're catching more asymptomatic people? Could be. Just very curious that we're seeing a graph like that. So some general thoughts on this, right? Given what we know, the news events, we know that there's been false data reporting, just flat out false reporting. Some of the stuff in Florida was they just reported it wrong. It was like 10 times higher than it should have been. We have had false positives. I have heard from people that said, they went in line, they signed up, they're waiting in line, they said, I got to go, and left. They get a note in the mail that said, hey, your coronavirus test was positive, and they never took it. We've seen, you've probably seen the report where, I forget, it was in a foreign country, somebody tested a piece of fruit and a piece of meat and sent it in there, and both of them came back positive.
Zimbabwe,
right? So, it's just hard to trust the data. We can see problems with this, like what's the real situation here? So we need to just basically say, okay, let's start using our own senses to figure this out.
PJ,
yeah.
What do you think's causing the sawtooth appearance of those graphs?
Great question.
Is that data stacking?
I think that is reporting, is what it is.
Data stacking? They're saving up cases so they can show a high number, like 1 day a week or 1 week a month?
It could be, or it could be that they're just reporting at the end of the month or a certain. This is daily, so it's like every Friday we're going to roll up reports in because they're not giving you the day. So I think some of them are just batching them in. So I think that's why we see this up and down, up and down. It's fairly consistent with the up and down. What's not consistent? Look at the beginning. We don't see that sawtooth. So I don't know if it's like, oh, hey, we got a lot more, we're just going to batch them in, or what the deal is. I just find that it's interesting, but I really think that's what it is. I think they're just saving them and then say, oh, we'll just turn them in Friday. Who knows? Maybe for someone to look at them and say, 200 more. I don't know. But I can say this, I don't trust the data. I just don't trust it. Given what we've seen, the false positives, running out, reporting that how they use the data, the fact that they're not, talking about the fact that that the death rate is actually, we have 3 times the amount of daily cases with less death rate. that shouldn't be overwhelming the medical facilities, right? That's basically saying, hey, we're getting this under control. In my opinion, we shouldn't be doing the things we're doing because we want to develop herd immunity and stuff like that. Long topic there, but anyway, where was I? There's no question this is being used for political advantage. I usually, guys, that keep this apolitical, but the bottom line is we're seeing it. We're seeing it used as political football. I think we can expect, more political nonsense around this. And then here's my concern. One, we saw that, hey, it's emerging again, and we're going to shut everything down. We could also see another threat. Understand this, they're pretty sure this came out of a lab. I find it really weird that Obama gave this lab $3.3 million about 4 years ago. That's fact. That's not speculation. That's fact. The Obama administration gave that lab in Wuhan $3.3 million. Okay. It came out of a lab, most likely man-made. There have been reports of sections of the genetic sequence that look like they were inserted. So could we see something else is certainly a question. And if the first one, yeah.
Did you happen to see the interview a while back with Bill Gates when he said the next virus will get their attention with a smirk on his face?
Oh God, please don't tell me that. I have heard, I know he's involved. I know he was
you have to go around, dig around, find it. But I mean, those were that was the clip that I watched. He said the next virus will get their attention. He had a smirk on his face. So.
Yeah, well, if that's the case, and it's like it's going to release something even worse.
I was pretty troubled by it.
That's my concern here, Nathan. Is okay.
When was that said? Before all of this, or recently?
That's a great question. I don't have the timeline. My understanding, but there again, that's an assumption because I've not gone and done the due diligence on it, so I didn't email it out to a bunch of people. But the way it was presented was that it was recently, but you always got to fact check that. So, but it's seemed to be since this really took off was my understanding, but I could be wrong on that.
Let's check it out. I had heard that he made a statement like that in November because he actually had a seminar. They had some sort of seminar on this, like literally, and then a couple weeks later, the first case pops up. Even if he said it then, it's just as sinister. Because saying, the next virus. If Bill Gates said that the next virus is going to get their attention, then he was talking about coronavirus, which is just as bad. If he's talking about it recently, that would be very troubling. But again, we're speculating that we could see it, so we're paying attention to it now. So, could we see something new emerge? Yeah, I think there's a possibility. Considering how much damage the last one did, and the fact that if you ever read books like The Hot Zone, Demon in the Freezer, both Richard Preston books, terrific books, by the way, how they can design pathogens to do unbelievable stuff. In the Demon in the Freezer, he was talking about weapons designers. A Russian weapons designer gets together with an American designer. They're just sitting there having a beer, and they're basically saying, yeah, we could put a brain pox into the air right now to wipe out Reston, right? And they were sitting in Washington, D.C. saying, yeah, all we have to do is get into the air and it would wipe out, right? And we know that troubling stuff exists. So if it exists, it's a possibility. Not that we have to panic or anything, just pay attention to it. And everything we've done has, again, you guys were supremely prepared for this because you had everything you needed to hunker down. And this was light. We still had access to grocery stores and things like that. But I know many of you guys, and myself included, were ready for like, okay, if this is going to be a couple months, we're good. We're going to be okay. So, this is the stuff just I think we have to, get ready for round two, pay attention to it. And then there's the flip side of that. While we have the virus itself, it's taking Bill Gates and that potential aside. While we have a lessening risk of direct risk of the virus, because we've shown its lethality is dropping as we have more cases going up, and we can treat it. It's the secondary and the political stuff that's greater, right? Right now we have vaccines being produced all over. Russia supposedly produced one, and Putin's daughter took it. I don't know if you guys have heard that in the news this week, right? I think Moderna which is a stock I invested in right before this. I'm 105% on it. Moderna has been given some sort of government contract to produce vaccines for the U.S. already. I know it was dozens of companies working on vaccines, and I know they're rushing, but that concerns me. Okay, but all over we have this work. Now, part of that is that whole Manhattan Project that Trump said was going to happen for vaccine production. Great. But once we have a vaccine, what kind of pressures are going to be to take it if you don't want to take it right away? And it's the, if you thought Gardasil was a pressure, this is really going to be it. Is it going to cost loss of social movement? In other words, you're not going to be able to do this or do that. I already saw an article where they said, who was it? It was one of the doctors that's on Fox News who said the kids have a star, right, means that they're not COVID, but if you take the star, it means they've been vaccinated, right? And we're right back to the crazy stuff of the Nazi Germany, where you're identifying groups of people by certain things like that. Will be required for a job. Will be required for proof of vaccination to buy, sell, go into a store. Who knows? It's just something to be aware of, because I'll tell you why. I've seen a lot of these COVID tattletales. I think they call them Karens or whatever. But my family was telling me about it. Wasn't Lucci's next door neighbor? They had a party and then somebody turned them in. Maybe it wasn't them.
Yeah, it was Lucci's.
Yeah, they just had a little, and it wasn't a big party. It was just a bunch of people come over in the yard, right? They're just hanging out in the yard. The next door neighbor turned them in. Hey, they're not wearing masks, right? So you're going to have that type of crazy stuff. We're going to see it. When vaccines come out, I think it's going to get very interesting, because we have the mask shaming. You're going to have the vaccine shaming for sure. Impact to mental health. We're already seeing that, right? I know of already a suicide that one of the contributing factors this person put in their suicide note was this whole COVID-19 virus, right? A young person, 20-something years old, right? And again, we're not helping them because we're raising the alarms and scaring the crap out of them in the news. And we don't know, these kids are sitting in their apartments reading it, thinking the end of the world come. We're like, no, that's just propaganda. What news you watch? ABC, get that off. Turn it somewhere else, right? We're not seeing that's the effects, but the mental health is definitely getting impacted. Child development. I know a lot of people are saying, hey, we're done. We're homeschooling, which for educational purposes is great. For other purposes like social interaction, immunity buildup, other things, not so great. There's going to be unintended consequences of that. What if we're looking at a harder shutdown? Somebody says, oh, hey, we got to go, this is worse. We're going to look at a harder shutdown. And that's what I think we need to prepare for. It's not go crazy, just our normal stuff, but just be prepared for the harder stuff that might come. And it could end up with further economic destruction. There is no, one thing I'm convinced is the political fight right now, there is a faction that would absolutely like to see this country down in flames. No question. Complete wipeout of the economic system, no question. And nobody's arguing with me. I have nobody saying like, oh, no, nobody exists like that. Oh yeah, I think we all know they do. And these are facts. Again, I tend to be apolitical on this, but these are facts. Democrats want voting by mail. That's a fact, because that's currently the only sticking point in a relief package right now that the president's supposed to sign. They got everything else done, but you've got to have $25 billion for the Postal Service so they can do voting by mail. Otherwise, we're not passing it. Can you believe that?
BJ.
Yeah.
BJ, Ron here. Here's an interesting little thing for you. Yesterday, the NFL Players Association is partnering with the Alliance for Retired Americans to do educational training for seniors. And so they want the presidents of the local chapters in Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Michigan, Florida, and Arizona to be on board with this, to tell people how to vote, basically, when they do the mail-in votes. And so I asked questions, okay, is this partisan or nonpartisan? Why is it just these 5 states? And so the guy in Philly is a conservative, and he's gonna say, we're gonna talk about it. But they're getting guys to promote this mail-in voting and how to vote. And so it's some interesting stuff.
Well, and there you go. That's exactly, you had mentioned that to me. That's a great point. Thanks for bringing it up, Ron. Now, why those states, people? Anybody have an idea?
Swing states.
Like we're stupid. It's like we're stupid. Oh, we just decided to pick those states. They're swing states. So this is what's going on. And again, I told you it's a fact. It's a fact. They want them voting by mail, right? If voting by mail is going to make a mess, it's going to muddy up the election. They can't even certify the election the next day, right? They just can't do it. So it's going to be, oh, we got to wait for all this. Oh, we're going to find stuff here. It could go all the way to the inauguration, is what they're saying.
BJ,
Yeah.
I heard there was a guy called in Rush today, said that he had done a little research, and he said if the election isn't verified by the 20th of January, the Speaker of the House becomes president.
Nancy
20th, 20th of January.
I heard that also.
That's about made that made my afternoon, knowing that shrew is going to be running the country.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. I had heard that too. I didn't get a chance to research it, but yeah, that absolutely. If they take it all the way to the inauguration, guess what? Could you imagine that? And that might be their strategy. That might be a Hail Mary. But it's just funny that they really, really, really want mail-in ballots.
Well, they want it because it's chaos and it's also the avenue for fraud. But what I don't understand is, what, just because the Democrat Congress wants it, all of a sudden it becomes a law of the land?
Yeah, I don't understand how they can do that too. But now here's the issue. Voting is done by the states, right? So Michigan can say, hey, we're just going to go do mail-in voting, right? But here's the problem. The Postal Service is what? Is it state or federal? That's the issue.
Federal.
And guess who's the head postmaster of the
Donald J. Trump.
Donald J. Trump, exactly right. So this is going to be funny. Supposedly, he's already cleaned out the bad people of the post office. This will be interesting to see how this goes out.
BJ, I was talking to somebody in the local Republican Party, and I don't intend to vote by mail. I was going to go because I don't trust it. But she said they're a little concerned because in the primary, like 54% of Republicans voted by mail, 84% voted by Democrats voted by mail. And she said their concern was that Governor Wolf could shut down in-person voting and blame it on the coronavirus and do that at the last minute. So she was recommending getting a voting by mail application, but I still haven't done it because I just don't trust it. But
well, there's
that's
a
just
difference.
Something out there. I don't.
Yeah, there's a difference between voting by mail and a
absentee ballot.
Absentee ballot.
Right. Yeah.
That's two different things.
Yeah.
And I recommend you do get an absentee ballot if you can, if that's the case, and we feel like it's going to happen. And yeah,
I don't know, but
that's the type of dirty stuff
yeah,
that could go on. Now, in that case, that's a revolt, folks.
yeah.
That is tyranny. Let's just call it what it is. The founding fathers would call it tyranny, and we're going to have to go take steps if something like that happens. But
He would do it. I mean, he shut everything else down. He's not responding to the legislature. He's just, he's doing what he wants. So I could see that happening. But
yeah, let's hope not. Let's
yeah,
just hope not.
but just I'm throwing that out there because that had not occurred to me that he would do that.
Here's the frightening thing, Colleen, that other people were discussing it, and it's not just BJ and his backwood boys talking about the latest conspiracy. It's somebody that's here saying this could happen, who's involved with it directly, right?
Yeah.
So that's just very good. Thanks for bringing that up.
What's the difference between absentee and mail-in? Because I was looking online and it was implying that they were the same with the one source I was looking at. It just, so I don't know. Can somebody comment on that?
Signature verification. You need signature verification for absentee ballot. For mail-in, you don't. And
And
that's why it's
I
so
did one for Henry, and he had to put his driver's license number, and there's more
it-
verification, yeah.
One source I looked at said it really varies by state, because if your state requires those things for absentee, that's what you got to do. But yeah, I was confused by it.
Yep, that's the difference. There's a level of authentication in the absentee ballot. Basically, they hand it to you after they say, "Let's see your verification," and they're expecting that to come back. And like, okay, there it is. And I seem to remember they number them or something too. It's been a while since the absentee ballot. I tend to show up there, but yeah, there's verification.
Yeah, I was planning to do absentee in Ohio because I'm concerned about what our governor may try to do at the last minute as well. I mean, I don't know what to expect.
None of us do, quite frankly.
Seems reasonable, but I don't know.
Yep. Anyway, Democratic governors want to see a continued shutdown. Again, these are facts. Mayors seemingly want continued anarchy. They want that all to play into it. Again, you wish you were talking like, oh, they're conspiracy theory, but this is fact. You don't defund the police and then say, oh, well, you don't know how to take care of this anarchy problem. The fact that they're, they won't clamp down on it, and now they're like, it's like, unless it's like a first-degree felony, they're not even going to bother prosecuting some of these places, right? What do you think it's going to do? Criminals are going to show up and loot, and it's going to be a mess, right? Anybody can see that. But no, they go ahead and do it. And then they want federal bailouts because we got some sort of problem here. The details of the George Floyd arrest were withheld deliberately, and he admitted it. I wanted to show this side of the problem. And what really bothers me about the George Floyd thing? It's this. The whole reason those guys got escalated, they're what's the word? The accusation against, I forget what they call it. Their indictment, okay? It's now changed to murder too, was because the guy that needled on his neck knew him and worked with him a year and a half prior at a bar, right? So just stay with me with this, right? There was a personal relationship there. Now, these guys have not said anything regarding a motive, right? It could have been, yeah, I caught the guy, the guy was like sleeping with my girlfriend. It could have been, oh yeah, he took money from me. Oh yeah, he made me look like I hate this guy, whatever. Here's the point. None of those reasons are racist. It isn't a racial reason. So in other words, we have turned this country upside down, and we don't really know the real motive of that crime.
Yeah, right? It's been very concealed.
Exactly. And we even concealed the fact that this guy was a bad dude. He beat up a pregnant woman and held a gun to her belly and said she's going to kill her kid if you don't, in a home invasion. That was one of his crimes. And he served jail time for that, right? This was a bad guy. Didn't hear that. Didn't hear that, they showed the arrest, and it was like, yeah, he was resisting arrest, had meth in it, or fentanyl in the system. It's just, the whole thing is like, wait a minute. This is orchestrated in many ways. I'm certain.
It's the same thing with that black kid in St. Louis. Mm-hmm. The one that went for the cop's gun, but, the next day, you see pictures of him, at 12 years old, dreaming of going to college or something. You don't see the fact that he was like 6'5" and 300 pounds, and
Yeah, exactly.
I was telling Bill a while ago that I look at a lot of these cop videos, from the cop worn cameras, and these situations where they're pulling these cars over escalate real quickly. I mean, they're completely uncooperative, and I'm convinced that a lot of these things, they do it specifically to take a little ass whooping and, then sue.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
A young guy, I mean, he can take a pretty good beating and recover from it, but then he'll have $1 million or $2 million to spend the rest of his life, living the life of Riley.
Yeah, and Bart, you're right. If you see some of these riot videos, you've seen people like barely brush them, right? They fall down like they were hit
like soccer players.
Yeah, hit with a exactly soccer players. It's exactly they act like, oh my gosh, somebody hit him with a brick. They're never touched.
Yeah.
You know, there was one I saw recently where this woman was putting a balloon in his face, and he just kind of knocked it back. The balloon hit her, and she started screaming like someone stuck her with a knife. It was amazing. And it's laughable.
That's your Karen.
Yeah.
You referenced Karens. Karens are just these crazy women that they just go nuts. But there's a whole thing. You go on YouTube and do Karens. The stuff you'll see is amazing.
I'll do that. It's entertaining anyway.
Yeah, it is.
Anyway, to move on here, you know, there's a lot. I know a lot of people. They're talking about efficacy, and I might have messed that up. Hydroxychloroquine or Z-Pak and zinc treatments. It's just something up there because there are doctors that are swearing by it, and there's nope, it's not effective. Here's the weird thing, right? Go Google hydroxychloroquine and cancer, and then you're going to fall down. I just learned this week there was this thing. This guy's talking about the efficacy of it, and like one of these bullet points, he talks about like, yeah, you know, in this study we found that it protected healthy cells while it allowed the virus to invade lung cancer cells. I'm like, what? And you're reading it, like, wait a minute, what? You know, this thing has a lot of properties. It's a fairly heavy tested medicine. It's been around for quite a while. So I don't know why all the scares there, but one thing's, I don't think we're getting a straight scoop on it. And we now start seeing that, like, I guess the Henry Ford Center said, hey, it is very effective. They just did a study and they come out and said it's a very effective treatment. So
you know what the problem is? Big pharma can't make any more money on that.
Yeah. It's
probably. Yeah.
It doesn't cost anything. It's all done. You know,
Mike
probably made in Israel or Ireland.
Well,
yeah, Mike and
but
Colin.
we treated all the nursing home patients who had it at St. Barnabas because they had a big outbreak. Everybody got that. Now, mortality was 50%, but they're also old, and you know what I mean? They're all like 100 years old over there. So that's not a good.
Right.
But we did treat, you know, a couple employees got it. We treated them, you know.
Okay.
I would use it, you know.
CDC's withdrawn its emergency authorization.
Or FDA is, yeah.
Yeah.
It's gotten political. I mean, you know, I think there's some decent data that it may be prophylactic, but, you know, Fauci has not blessed it. So, you know, he's kind of the god on all this for some reason. I don't know why, but the media has coronated him as God. So
of medicine.
yeah, he hasn't seen a patient in 30 years, but hey, that's okay.
Hey, just some background for our new guests here. Mike and Colleen are physicians, so hey, you can trust what they're talking about here. And now that's considered. You can get that as a generic drug, actually.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's been 20 years. I mean, Plaquenil is the trade name for. We treat people with like lupus and rheumatoid arthritis with it for years. I mean, we have, but. You know, it's still generic. You can, you know, so it's real cheap. So, you know, I think it's true the drug companies can't make a whole lot on it. So, but it's pretty safe. I mean, it's a 5-day treatment. They keep saying, well, there's all these risks of heart problems. Well, for 5 days, that's negligible. You know, it's not long term. People have been taking it for years, don't have a problem with it. Z-Pak is 5 days. You're not going to have a problem in 5 days. You know,
something like between 10 and 20 million Americans taking it for connective tissue disease. The most they do is 6 months. They watch your eyes to make sure you don't get deposits in them in the retina in the back, the retina.
Yes.
And you know, I've never seen anybody who ever had that. We used to use much higher doses in the past, and so all of the hoopla about it, toxicity goes back to those days.
Yeah. I think they used 2,400 milligrams and every day. Yeah. And this is like 400, depending on, there's different regimens. It's 400 to 800 a day for 5 days, depending on the regimen you use. So, you know, that's not.
It is if you go to a rheumatologist and you have a rheumatic disease and they're not sure what it is, okay, which is commonly the case because it takes a while for them to figure what it is. If you know what it is right away, it's bad. They have 2 medicines they start with. One's methotrexate, Plaquenil. Why would it be the starting thing for that kind of stuff if it's just
That's a great point. That's a very good point.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thanks for adding that.
But I don't know how easy it is to get, as far as I know, I mean, some states have restricted it. I think that's crazy. I don't think this state has, though I've had pharmacists call me and ask me why I'm prescribing it. And I think they just have to check a box to say, yeah, the doctor said they had COVID or something. So I'm not sure,
Yeah. Okay.
who knows? I
Good
never
to
know
know.
if this governor's doing it. I'd have to look that up, but yeah.
Well, when you figure that out, please tell us.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Anyway, moving on. We're clearly being gamed here, so we just need to pay attention to this. The recommendations right now, I'd say, look, let's just top off like we did round one. There's just so much turmoil right now. Who knows what could break? And again, like we saw last time, we had people in stores buying up stuff left and right. And there's danger in that, especially if it's something you need. I don't want my loved ones there, and you don't want the Millers buying stuff when you need it, because I got boys eating. I got a healthy appetite myself, so it's gonna be less for you. But just the same thing. Just prepare for 1 or 2 months. Just make sure you're back to where you were. The only thing I'd say is whenever we had this, we saw some gaps in our plans and our gaps in our pantries and things like that. Just go back and say, yeah, I remember, you know what? I had that. I wished I had that. Just go fill that in. Nothing crazy. We're probably maintaining this anyway, but just make sure we're ready to go again for round two. And again, once again, prepare for 1 to 2 months just in case. Next to nothing's being transmitted regarding prevention other than masks. That bothers me. My grandfather's idea of the health insurance was not to need a doctor, right? And he grew up on a farm, and he took care of the animals. Unfortunately, his insurance policy for the animals was like 25 cents. We'd say, that's Grandpa's 25-cent insurance policy, and it was a bullet. Yeah, it's like, animal got sick, we got to put it down, So we tease him about it. But, there's a lot we can do with our health. And the doctors here, I'm sure, will tell you that. But, there's been studies years and years like, hey, having vitamin C in your system helps. Having vitamin D in your system helps. We know zinc, they said, all three of these somehow disrupt viruses, and people that take it on a regular basis tend to be healthier. So why not? Let's pay attention to that. Exercise, eating rate, weight loss, all that stuff, pay attention to that. Because if we can keep ourselves healthy and doing better, that's just going to be, that's sustainable. And I think it's just once again, another time, let's just make sure we're not there. Don't overstress, try to eat well, try to get plenty of water. I have a newly minted exercise science master sitting across from me right here. So it's awesome, right? And she's into health and eating well and all that stuff. So it's really cool that we can lean on that. But that's the things I think we need to pay attention. Continue to maintain the antiviral and antibacterial press. It's funny, it's all about the masks. You don't hear so much about hand washing and stuff like that. It's like I just don't hear about, wash your hands and stuff.
Before this, masks were never recommended for the flu. I mean, I think the whole mask thing is just, in certain situations, yeah, but it's really not ever been proven during the flu season. And you can find it on the CDC. They may have pulled it down, but they did a compilation of 14 studies on masks, and they really didn't find any effectiveness during flu season. And the coronavirus is a little smaller than the influenza virus, but even the N95 masks don't really protect against the coronavirus. So I think this is nonsense. But
and Carly, thank you for volunteering that.
I'm a lone voice, though. Everybody in my office is freaking out. I'm like, all right, I wear a shield because I hate the mask. I can't breathe. But I think, and reasonable doctors will say, even Fauci initially said it doesn't do anything, but I think he's been bullied into it. So,
well, here's how my experiment, right? So I'm walking with a mask, and I walked past somebody who had been smoking a cigarette, right? And I could smell that cigarette right through the mask. And I took the time to seal it and clean it and test it, right? Make sure it was on there was nothing inside going in there. That was going through there. And I think the correct term is a virion or a virion, like a virus particle, is smaller than a smoke particle, if I remember right. So if I'm smelling smoke, that's not stopping it. Now, granted, it comes in some sort of liquid form and stuff like that, but my gut feeling is that's probably not doing a ton. Maybe helps a little, but these
I mean,
things.
you can't do a decent study because even the N95s, I have a friend who this is what she's doing now. She works for the government testing the N95s, and a lot of them come from China. Only about 40 to 50% actually are effective in screening out viral particles. So even the N95s, on a good day, only about half of them do what they're supposed to do. Everybody's wearing, homemade masks or bandanas or whatever. You cannot do a study on those because everybody's using something different, and even the surgical masks are made differently depending on who makes them, so there's not really good scientific data on this. And, you try to tell people that. And I mean, a lot of people, I actually have a lot of patients who tell me this is all going to go away after the election. And I don't talk politics, but they just volunteer that. So I think there's a lot of awareness out there, but
That's good to hear. We're not completely sheep.
No, we're not. I don't know how many, but it's just, it's irritating to me that, there's a lot of Karens out there though with the mask thing. And if you don't wear it, you're killing people.
My wife was in a small Verizon store today in our little small town. She didn't have a mask on. She was in there for a while, and apparently corporate was watching through the cameras, notified the manager she needed to put one on.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, they were afraid they'd get
creepy
the virus in their video system.
Yeah.
I agree. That's creepy. You're right.
It's like 1984.
I know. It's terrible. Gosh.
Well, lawyers, because if somebody gets it in the store or gets it, they can say, look, I was in Verizon and somebody wasn't wearing a mask.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's, but.
Absolutely.
Hey,
right.
BJ, I was going to add something too. I don't know if we talked when we were together, but my pet peeve with this whole social distancing is that they're calling it social distancing instead of just calling it physical distancing. That, I think it's made people angry.
Yeah.
It's made people not trust anybody. They don't want to look at you in a store. They just walk by you. And so I think we ought to start a protest or something where we say no to social distancing, yes to physical distancing, or, something. So just a suggestion.
Yeah, think about it. Everybody jumped on social distancing, but you think about the word, social meaning socializing, and distancing yourself. You're cutting yourself off from your social circles. That can't be good. Physical distancing, well, you do that anytime you had the flu or a bug or a cold. I'm going to stay away from you, keep some distance here. But you didn't disconnect from society, and I think that's the distinction you're kind of making, and it's important. It's right in line what I was putting down here, Rod. Thanks. Is we got to find little ways to get our lives back to normal where we can and maintain it, and fight that little inch and say, okay, we're not going to give there, because I agree, it's as worthy of saying, hey guys, we've taken this. This is supposed to happen for a couple of weeks to flatten the curve, and now we're wrecking our country doing this, and people are going to have to stand up. I think this real fight's coming. I think as we get closer to November, it's going to be there. But you're right. We need to get back, to our lives here. Okay. All right.
One more thing about the virus. The people who do worse tend to have the bigger inflammatory response. Initially we were treating it like influenza, and it's more the people who do very poorly are the ones who have a bigger inflammatory response. So
interesting.
Any type of anti-inflammatories have been beneficial. They've been treated using budesonide, which is like a steroid inhaler, nebulizer. That has been helpful. So just FYI, anything that's an anti-inflammatory like ibuprofen, aspirin may be helpful. If you have a child who has asthma and has that budesonide, that would be something helpful to take if you get it.
Wow, that's good to know.
So,
the more we know, it's helpful.
Yeah. And doctors have been using it, but it's one of those, the media The media just doesn't talk about this. Anybody who talks about, hey, I have a way to treat it, the media like stomps on them. So they can't, it's hard to get the word out, but yeah, so.
And you would think it'd be the other way around. If they truly care, it would be the other way around.
You think?
Yeah,
Yeah.
indeed,
Yeah.
indeed. Okay, well, to finish up, and again, there's a lot more thing here. I wanted to kind of go through some things here that are still pertinent, okay? Because if we kind of are into this whole area, we're going to start running into problems. Then there's some skills we should probably have. And by the way, you can co-opt these skills by developing your communities. And that's what we've all been about, is like, how do we develop our community with our people and barter and trade these skills or develop them ourselves, okay? So I just want to kind of roll through a little of this because some of it was pertinent today. Skill number 10, right? We talk about this wellness, the ability to promote and maintain good physical and mental health. We said this was going to be, back then, this is going to be an important skill that we should develop it just to keep ourselves healthy. And you know, as health insurance gets more expensive, it makes sense to prevent. So why don't we take that route instead of having more and more insurance and then hoping that whatever we get sick with is cure? Why don't we let's eat right, lose the weight, you know, get out there and exercise. And the cool thing about it is that COVID actually did. There's a lot of people I know that some people used to walk in our neighborhood. I see a lot of people walking in our neighborhood now on a frequent basis. You guys too, because it's like, look, I got to do something. And I think what's going to happen is right now the health clubs are closed. My daughter is currently working at like an upscale one, and you know, she does online classes and things like that for people. And I think it's just there. Whenever this breaks, I think people are going to hit the gym. There's going to be that's going to be a good thing. There's going to be people. Well, I want to get out. I want to exercise and socialize, and that was a great place to do it. I think these places are going to go up, but until then, it's still just a great idea to find ways to keep yourself healthy. If you got to invest in some workout equipment or something like that, it's worth it if you can stick with it. I just think it's a skill, and the ability to promote that and help people with, I think, is just a very important thing. We talked about this. You know, supplements are a good thing. We don't get the things in our food that we did 50, 60 years ago, when most of our food came from locally sourced providers. It was like 1950s, and I got into this because I was in the agriculture business for a short amount of time, did a lot of research. It was like 70% of the stuff that was in your grocery store was from farmers within 150 miles of that store. That's an amazing thing. We couldn't even think of something like that. But the milk and the produce and things like that they could get, and it's like things were out of season, right? We don't have tomatoes out of season. Back then it was like, well, yeah, tomatoes out of season, don't have too many of those. It's canned tomatoes, right? So we don't get the things in our food. Supplements are great. Eating healthy, fresh, live logo. We've always talked about gardening, and everybody here is gardening. And I tell you, Mike and Colleen's garden was pretty awesome this year. So kudos to you guys. It was pretty neat. I went over to their house and was like, wow, they're really doing some cool stuff. But little things like stress reduction and being very deliberate about it's going to be helpful. Rid yourself of unhealthy, expensive habits. You know, this is a great time to quit smoking if you're doing it. And just the beneficial practices that, you know, if you can do that, that's just a great skill to help others and develop yourself. Back then, we said it's time to get serious, people. Many of us did, reaping the benefits of it. It's just not a bad idea. Skill number 9, adaptation. That's an important part. A friend of mine, Tim Daigle, and I spent a lot of time in the IT world, and you're constantly having to adapt there. In fact, that's probably, as an IT guy, it's one of my greatest skills is I can be thrown into a situation, I can quickly adapt. I can learn it, I can master it, I can control it, I can manipulate it, I can change it, configure it, and make it work. And you know, we don't know how this mess is going to go down. And I've seen people come apart. Again, I talked about like a 24-year-old kid, I think it's what he was, who killed himself because he was like, one of the things, he just can't deal with this virus. And he the world's ending, I may as well just go ahead and do it now before that happens. There are people that just can't cope with tremendous amounts of change. And we got to remember, like, okay, this rapid rate of change can be managed like anything else. And like I said, Prozac might help you cope, but it doesn't help you adapt. And that's what we really need to do. Now, what we do in this group is exactly that. We're helping each other adapt. We've helped each other through things left and right. And that's the purpose of this. In fact, probably the next time I'm going to talk about it, because we're getting new members. And I'm going to talk about the original charter of the Hope Council was basically, there's some things, and we covenant. We say, hey, what stays in here, we're not going to talk about if it's private. Obviously, there's things that we can share with people that are beneficial. But, that we're here to help people cope, to be a solution, to give them hope. That's what we call the Hope Council. And that's what we're going to continue to do with it. But having the ability to adapt is huge. I've seen in sports, I know, Ron, you have, I've seen in business, I've seen all over the place where people that can't cope with what's going on end up getting run over. And the one thing you can count on is things are going to change, right? So you learn to manage change. That's what we do in the IT business. In fact, there's a whole science of this, or if you will, a practice called change management, in which, okay, we're going to change something in an organization that's pretty big. How are we going to get ready for that change? How are we going to adapt to the change? How are we going to train people for that change? So change management is really important. Look at things, changes from all perspectives, and don't panic. Let's just step back and take a look at that. Control your emotions. Learn to turn lemons into lemonade. My kids are sick of hearing that. Probably the only one they're more sick of is saying is where there's change, there's opportunity. I've told that to them a million times. When I die, it's probably going to be on my it's an epitaph for me. But time and time again, I've shown that, hey, anytime you have any type of change, there's an opportunity. Go find it. It's almost invariably there's an opportunity that's beneficial. Go find it. So we need to think like that. Skills we should be thinking about community building, and there are people here who would be natural community builders. I think Ron's wife is would probably be a natural community builder. She's one of these bridge people that can take two parties and find differences and get get parties to agree, and just has that skill. And it's as old as anything. If you take care of me, I'm going to take care of you. Mutual what's it called? Mutually assured survival is what it is. And that's just still an important thing. And I know this is important because of people reaching out to me saying, it just happened this week. Some neighbors that we did talk to called back and said, can you come down and talk? We want to talk to you about this stuff. And we talk about how we'll take care of the neighborhood. We've had resilient communities are really hard to overcome. Bloomfield during the G20 convention is one of my favorite examples. If you guys remember the G20, it was around 2009, I want to say, 2010, somewhere in there, where the G20 came to Pittsburgh. And if you remember, we had all these anarchists come in from out of state and cause damage. And again, they didn't protest like they meant it. I think they threw a brick through a Ferrari window and they threw a brick through Susie's Noodles, right? It's like, good, you're going to protest. But part of this is there were some casualties. I mean serious casualties. But there were some injuries and people that were hurt. Police as part of that because they came here just to stir up trouble. But the community of Bloomfield had a really interesting solution to this. Right? They found out that these riders, all dressed in black and the usual stuff, right, were coming to Bloomfield. Right, they're coming to Bloomfield. They're coming to march down the street and cause trouble, right? And a funny thing happened. They come walking down the street, and all the residents were standing on their stoops and their porches, and they were holding baseball bats and shovels and a variety of other implements. And the message was very clear: you're free to protest. You can head on down the street, hey, wave. That's it. Wave, smile at you, right? But it was very clear. If you come in here and do anything to any piece of property, you're going to get your arm broke, maybe worse. And it's funny, they just quietly went down the street. There wasn't even much protesting. It was just, okay, we're not this street. We'll go do the next one, right? And that's what happened. All these residents got together and say, hey, we're going to stand out and just show some solidarity here. We're not going to let them do anything. And nothing happened. Lexington and Concord, that's another beautiful example of communities that banded together. The British were coming to disarm them, is what it was. And people don't realize that the people that stood on the battlefield at Lexington and Concord, these were church members that were trained by pastors. Go check it out. And the community had worked to, okay, we're going to support people, we're going to get people that train, we're going to hide things, we're going to look after each other. And the community was working this. And they also worked out communication lines to get other communities to help. Fascinating story, and it's a shame. Every American should know that. Get a chance to go visit those battlefields. It's pretty cool, because you're going to look at this and say, like, wow, there's the church, and and this is people working together to make sure that they're going to survive, that nobody's going to hurt us. And there's a lot of bad things that the British was doing back then to intimidate or to beat down the colonists, everything from dragging women and children out, raping them, beating them, killing them in front of their husbands, like I said, disarming them left and right. They would come to take their cannons and their arsenal, and that was just unacceptable. That was it. That was the last straw. But these communities basically made that happen. Lexington and Concord was not a military operation. It was communities standing up to the government. Check it out. This is another one, Buddhists. They are as nonviolent as they come. But I think if you click on that link, I might still have it. They faced with Islamic Jihad, and they were picking up arms and going after them. It's like, look, okay, we get the whole peace thing, but we're not stupid. We're not going to let you roll over us. So resilient communities are very hard to overcome. If you build a resilient community, you're going to be in great shape. And that's how we need to prepare to go into this thing here. These are the other things to coexist, cooperate, planning. Peacemaking is important. There's a difference, and I talk to people about this in the Bible when I do Second Amendment discussions. Jesus says, blessed is the peacemakers, basically for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. Isn't that right, Tim? Is that the right verse? If he's still there. But there's a difference between peacemaking and peacekeeping, and that's what we confuse the two. You have a UN, I say, hey, you think about peacekeeper, what do you think? Oh, UN peacekeeper. Yeah, they're there and they kind of just mediate. But to make peace is a forcible action. In fact, that's why the Colt 45 was called the peacemaker. It was force. It would force peace. So peacemaking is the skill of determining when you need to press it to have some peace or get somebody to remove the risk and things like that. It's a statementship type of skill, and it's very great to learn. Neighborhood is your family. Having that attitude and acting that out ahead of time is not only a great Christian value, it's just a wonderful way to steward and look after the people that are looking after you. Complementary skills. My neighbor across the street has skills. We trade tools. A neighbor over here, same thing. We trade vegetables. So we look at complementary skills, and that's what we want to put in your community. Find that. This is a perfect example. We've got financial people. We've got doctors. We've got IT nerds. We have construction people. We have everybody here. And this is why it works really well, because we can all help each other out. Also involvement. Community building is very deliberate. Takes a lot of work, but quite frankly, this is the one that could give you the greatest return. When you have people you're up against the wall, it's other people who are going to go pull you out. So if you haven't been, most of the people have, but if you're just starting, keep going. This is your most important thing to get going. Home remedy, first aid, or doctors will tell you here, like, look, there's times where just learn to take care of the small things yourself, and then you won't have to rush in to some of these places. And it could be life-saving and money-saving, and like you have, both are acceptable outcomes. You'll feel a lot more safer and a lot more confident if you have basic first aid and you learn how to take care of the little things. You have the stuff on hand to do it and know the difference. Okay, now I know I got to go to the doctor, but obviously using your judgment. But it's those things that are like, wow, if you can help people out and help isn't going to arrive, and you can do that, could be just an amazing skill to have. Home remedies are great. They're out there. Use many are here daily that absolutely work. Coconut oil, I'm finding out, has some pretty cool things. about it. Just simple stuff you can have around the house. So take care of the little things, learn to deal with that. And, it's just a great skill to do. Repair mechanics, it's a great skill to throw into your community or learn yourself. Unfortunately, our world is now in a throwaway economy. It's just crazy that, I started my career fixing computers. I still do. But a lot of this stuff is like the whole things you throw out. But I tend to fix a lot of stuff here. One, because I've developed the ability to do it over time. But two, I don't like paying the money when I know I can do it myself. And most of the time I can do it better or done it the way I want. So learning to just do, and start little, start really little, fix a toaster, fix an appliance. You want to figure out how to do it, call me. I'll give you some basic things that help you fix a little thing. And it's a very rewarding thing to do. If you can fix things, that's a big money saver. It's an excellent barter. And it's a great opportunity for community building. Somebody has a washing machine, you go over and fix them, you're good as gold. Okay. Challenge yourself on little things, fixing little things, and start looking to challenge yourself with big ones. It isn't hard. Just over time, you'll develop the skills. And case in point, this is my latest project. I'm in the process of pulling an engine and putting another engine in a car, in a late model car. Now, I had people going, man, you are crazy. You're absolutely crazy. You're right, but here's what it is. I have a car that has 193,000 miles on it, and it's in terrific physical shape. That's it right there. There's very little rust on it. It is well kept. It's largely highway miles. There's nothing wrong with it. It was undercoated. It's not rusted, right? It's just got a sad, tired motor, right? So I can't trade it in. The motor's got a problem. They're saying, we'll give you $1 for it. I need a car for my boys. So I can go ahead and go spend $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 so I find a decent car that's not going to break down. Or I can go rebuild, pull this out, put our recycled engine, rebuild it, put it back in. And the boys are helping me with that. And there you go. It's good. Now, here's the thing. I'm somebody that tends to challenge myself each time. So this is a pretty big challenge. Don't recommend this for the average person. But my point is I got to that by changing a fuse, then changing a window. They don't have them anymore. You roll up the windows. And then changing a starter, and then changing a whatever, and just building up to it. So the principle's there. You can accomplish big things by just starting small. And you might not think you're handy. You'll be surprised how quickly you can develop the discipline of fixing something. It's really helpful. Anyway, tools, basic, mechanics, electronics. There's some great stuff on the internet. My gosh, you can get quite an education. In fact, you can pretty much put in your situation and somebody's on there showing you step by step how to fix it. I'm not kidding you. You can go in there and say, wheel bearing, 2010 Chrysler Town and Country, and there's somebody online saying, hey, today we're going to change your wheel bearing at Chrysler Town and Country. I had a washing machine that had that sadly the main bearing went, and sure enough, there's somebody on there saying, here's how you change a main bearing in this particular model of a Maytag washer. So it's a tremendous opportunity. You learn, get a little bit of time, you can save some money. It's rewarding. Anyway, moving on quickly. I know we're running out of time. Negotiation. Negotiation is huge. That's a skill I wish I did more. I can negotiate a little bit. It's a lost art in America. Our farmers are great negotiators. If Reed's on here, he's a master negotiator. If you want to have any discussion, like how can I negotiate a situation, better call him. He'll have ideas to tell you, like how's the motivation, here's how you work with somebody, because he negotiates daily. It's incredible. And almost everything is negotiable. So remember that, okay? You can, savings, barter. Barter is something that's really cool. I like to barter. I still do it where I can. I've bartered, hey, I need an engine crane, I'll give you this, right? Or, hey, I've got this particular tool, I'll swap you one because I need a drill press. There's a lot of ways you can use negotiation. Conflict resolution is another one, is a great one. It could be a life-saving skill. So, you know, learning, if you think you're like weak in negotiation, start learning how to negotiate better. Not a bad thing of it. And again, get past the emotion of it. That's the biggest thing. I wish we had Mexican markets around here because that's a great place to learn how to negotiate. If you've been there, it's fun. Okay, economics. It's not just about, economics is actually not just about money. Economics is about efficiency. Efficiency, how you run your house. Efficiency, how your car runs. Efficiency in computers, in trade, all sorts of things. Economics is about efficiency. So learning these things help us manage better. I'm really sad that they don't have the science of home economics really taught well in the schools. They'll teach you how to cook. They won't teach you they'll teach you the basics of, okay, here's a checkbook. They won't teach you how to like set up a life plan, you know, like a financial plan or spending plan or just a little budget. That'd be huge for some of these young people coming out. How debt's bad, all that stuff, right? These are things that, you know, and most of these people, you guys are well upon that. But if you're behind it, pick it up. And then we'll have all this stuff posted here, and this will be in the video. Same thing, economics and time management. There's efficiency in everything. So, you know, take the time to look at that. And I've even said, spending time in economics, a number of two-income households could probably do away, some of them could do away with one of them if they were serious about economics. And they looked at what's going in, what's going out, how they're consuming. They could probably get rid of one whole salary just in the savings and the smart things they're doing. So it's worth looking at. If you had one whole person with time to do, what could they do? Start a business, manage your lives better. It would be pretty cool. Security, self-defense, we're probably going to talk more about that in the next meeting because, you know, that if we start seeing this, and again, there seems to be what I'm hearing is Antifa and BLM are targeting cities in a serial basis. You know, that stuff comes to Pittsburgh, we could have an issue here. And I got to tell you, the next meeting, I'll show you what they did to Pittsburgh, some of the stories and stuff when they came down. You didn't hear much of it. It was actually a war down there that you weren't even aware of. I'll have pictures of it. I'll show you what they were doing. And this is targeting. There's no question. This wasn't protest. This was targeted looting. And we'll talk about that. But anyway, if you feel like you're short on self-defense or security and it's time to like pick up your game there, I get on it as soon as possible. Just a great skill to have. And there are people in here and other places that can help you do that. If you need some advice, give me a call, okay? And again, basically it's learn how to not become the victim. I have a friend of mine who's a policeman in Bellevue, a sergeant, and he gives me all sorts of stories, but it's largely, it's like, look, a lot of this is, if you learn how not to be a victim, you're going to be just fine. So, you know, learn that skill. Backyard homesteading, I know that's a big one for people, but, you know, a lot of us here have learned some of the basics of what we call backyard, pioneer living outdoors in your backyard. We've shown you can grow food on just about anything. And like I said, Mike and Colleen had a blue ribbon garden. It was amazing. And you would be shocked at how little it is. There she is with her onions. Let me unmute you. There you go. Okay. But there she's holding a basket of onions, and that's pretty cool. This was her first year, I think, for doing that. They just had an amazing amount of produce in a very small area. And it's fun to do. It's great to have your own stuff. Definitely tastes better. There's no question. And it's at a level of self-sufficiency that helps. So it's worth doing. And there's benefits to doing it left and right. So worth it. Okay. We can talk about these stuff later if you want to get into that. It's coming into the fall. But in the spring, if you're interested, give me a call and we'll talk through that stuff. And we'll feature some of our members' stuff. So, Colleen might take some pictures. I think it was great. But yeah, we'll talk about these things and how this helps, because if we end up with some sort of economic collapse that lasts for a while, and we've seen this, Argentina, we think, oh, we're not Argentina. Oh yeah, we could be very quickly. If we're, in fact, in some ways it could be worse. So we need to pay attention to that type of stuff. Okay, number one, I'll let you go. Critical thinking. Critical thinking is almost a lost art these days, right? And there's actually a discipline to critical thinking of looking at, and why it's so important, and some of you are probably getting it now, is when you look at the news and you're saying, what's true? What clues do I know that this is true? Okay, I'm seeing this, I'm watching them say that, I'm not hearing them say that. You're starting to pick something out to say, you know what, that's probably BS, right? Critical thinking is the ability to do that, like on a broad spectrum. Now, in my business, IT, you know, my friend Tim can tell you, we just spend a lot of critical thinking because you have to learn to troubleshoot quickly. And you take bits of data and things like that. So that's why I'm really good at this, is because a lot of times my world is about finding solutions or solving problems, and I have to do it in creative ways to try to figure out what's really wrong here. It's not taught in primary education. A lot of times critical thinking is in the college level, and it's sad because if our young people could learn critical thinking, it would be terrific. You know, it's basically, you know, it's you can weed through the noise that happens from our governments and from the news, and I think our founding fathers would be thrilled because they were really good critical thinkers. But this is something they'd say, you got to have this to protect your rights. If you go out there and you put critical thinking, there's actually 6 rules of evidentiary reasoning that they're taught in college and law school. And I recommend you guys go out and look at these. But there's just some simple things around this that you don't have to get that detailed to look at it. It's great to look at these, by the way. But it's just like, look, here's tools out there that we can use. We can use logic. We can use inference, which is basically another form of logic. We think of logic as, you know, A plus B, you know, A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C type of thing, right? I call it positive logic. Inference is kind of negative logic of figuring out what's there based on pieces. Rationality, taking emotion out of it and just saying, okay, let's really look at the situation. That's important. Looking at motive, looking at trustworthiness of data. We look at it all the time. Discernment, discriminating what's coming in. But anyway, it's our number one skill that we can have going forward. And if you have developed the ability to critically think, and it's worth reading a little bit on it, of how to do it or approaches to it, or saying, hey, if I'm in a problem, step back and ask myself these 3 questions, right? Just something like that alone. Just that alone, probably a paragraph worth of data could change your life or change your situation or give you insight on something that's been troubling you for years. So I highly recommend you guys go out there and take a look at it. It's, you know, I hate to gloss over it, but it's something I think is really important. Anyway, that's it. I tried to rush this all and get it in 2 hours. Sorry I'm late. But open up for discussion. I'm going to be here for a little bit. But yeah, thank you all for attending. Any questions or anything you guys want to add at this point?
Okay, I have a question, if you don't mind going all the way back to the discussion about silver and gold.
Yeah. What slide?
If you have somebody that's going to pay you in precious metal for a service, how do you know how to set the value? Because it didn't work out for us to look at today's prices, because that's not what you can get when you want to sell it.
Yeah, because here's why. If you go take a look at, and that's a great point, and I'm glad you brought that up. If I take a look at silver, right? Let's just use silver. We're saying, hey, there's a bid and there's an ask. I don't know if you can see that there. There's 2 prices. This is a bid and an ask, and that's for the bare metal, right? So basically, you could say most dealers are going to say, look, I'll pay $27.42 for that, but if you're going to buy it for me, I'm going to cost $27.52 per ounce. And this is, by the way, this is on raw metal traded on the commodities exchange. That's what you're looking at, right? That's what sets the price. So what happens is basically the difference between the bid and ask is called the spread, and that's what the dealer makes for handling the transactions. They need to make money, otherwise they're not going to do it. So what they'll say is, like, I'll buy it from this, but I'll sell it a little bit higher for that, or I'll buy it for low, but I'll sell it for high. So that's the first part of it. The problem is when you start looking at how they're paying. Now, if they're giving you raw silver, that's pretty close, okay? If it's 100%, like 999 silver, that's going to get you pretty close. Other than the dealer spread, if it was bars, like silver bars, that would be pretty close.
I was going to ask, we request bars as opposed to coins or something that might not be worth as much?
Yes, and here's what. U.S. coins, old U.S. coins, they're great. They're transactable. The problem is they're only 90% silver. So if someone says, oh, here's a silver dollar, and I'm going to go look on it, $1 is an ounce, about 1 ounce coin, and they say, here, it's worth 27.53. It's, first of all, it's worth 10% of that because of the base metals in it. Then there's another little piece of that they actually use for calculation because of the, it basically averages out some things that like for wear, loss, things like that. So it basically says, okay, it's 90%. You should be paying 10% of that is metal, and that's what you get. Then you have the dealer spread on that, so it's going to be a little bit less than that. So that's what you have to look. I recommend if you're going to take silver coins, go out to Coinflation, and it'll tell you a U.S. quarter is worth, a 90% U.S. quarter of 1950, okay, is worth this much in silver. And then take for the count that you have a little market maker there, a little bit, couple nickel here, nickel there on a quarter, and that's what your price is. So
did you say that was called Coinflation? Is that a website or something?
yes, it is. Coinflation.com. You can go on there and it'll give you the price of everything. So if someone's going to pay you in there, in a particular, like, hey, Morgan dollars, go out there and look at the Morgan dollars and find out what they're worth, and then do the buy on that. You're not the, you know, they're going to sell it to you, but you're basically saying, look, you're asking me to take something, and there's no middleman in the middle. So you can either split it or say, I'll give you the bid price for that. Because it benefits you, because you're not taking something, you may want it, but again, there's a hassle of having to liquidate it. So you should benefit you in the process.
Right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
No, thanks.
Yep. Okay. Any other questions? Talk. All good? All right. Guys, it was great to see you. Like I said, we'll probably do another one of these probably in the middle of another month because I think things are going to break here. And there's a few other things going on that I'm starting to develop material for that we'll talk about there. But in the interim, what I'll do is hopefully, if this recording turned out well, I'll find a way to get it out there to you. Plus, I'll send a presentation. Yeah.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks, BJ.
You guys have a great evening.
so much, BJ.
Thanks, man.
Yep.
Yeah,
Thank you, BJ.
See you later.
Thank you so much.
All right, good night.
See you later.
Mhm.